finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized SEMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a SEMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the SEMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the SEMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here again. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Today's show is ICAN on Air, and it's so exciting for us to be here. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, okay, who is this? My name is Fumi Olani, and I'm bringing a lovely and educative program to your view today. And I hope that we'll all have fun and enjoy the educative topic that we have today. So I would first of all want to say hello to our Muslim brethren. Today marks the end of the Ramadan, and I say congratulations. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating the every hour eat and drink. So it's great to be here. Good day, my professional colleagues, friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and all our listeners. I'll say thank you so much for being here, today being the 20th day of April 2023. And it's your favorite educative program, ICAN on Air, which comes up every Thursday, 6 p.m. And today is going to be different because we know something is happening in Nigeria very soon, and everyone is worried or perhaps optimistic about what is going to happen. Okay, what is this thing that is coming up so soon? It feels like, yes, it's coming so soon. So today, we'll be discussing a very important topic. It's called Leveraging Insight from Accurate Census for Growth and Development. But before I unveil the identity of our very experienced guest on today's program, I would like us to go on a commercial break. And when we come back, you'll see the very special guests we have on the show today. So welcome back, everyone. Yes, it's still ICAN on air, and I said I have someone very excited, someone very interested in the studio today. And remember, it's the 20th day of the month of April, and we're so excited because, well, everyone is excited. It's public holiday tomorrow. So right now, I'm up with something interesting, and honestly, when I unveil the guest on the show today, you would understand the effectiveness and the reason for this topic. So I'm going to be bringing on board our guest for today, Dr. Yemi Kale. So let me give a brief about Dr. Yemi Kale because I have almost like an epistle of him, but we'll try to create a short note from what he is. But this is not all about him. You need to know him. So Dr. Yemi Kale is a partner and the chief economist as well as the head of research at KPMG Nigeria. Is a former statistician general of the Federation and a chief executive officer of the National Bureau of Statistics. At KPMG Nigeria, it leads the firm's view on macroeconomics and enhances its growth agenda by both supporting and originating engagement involving modeling and econometrics. Is also responsible for leading KPMG's research team. I have a lot to say about our guest today, but I would just want him to say hello to us and you would understand where we're coming from, that we have a depth of knowledge in the house. Hello, Dr. Kale.
Hello, Fumi, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. It's really great seeing you. I've seen you on different platforms. I've heard about you. And it's so nice having this discussion. And I know that a lot of people are going to enjoy what we are going to bring to them today because you're on board. So I'd like to ask you, right? Because today's topic is quite is germane. It's different from what we are used to in Nigeria, especially since independence 1960. A lot of things have happened, yet Nigeria has not really experienced this. So remember, the topic is leveraging insight from Accurate Census for growth and development. So the first question I would like to ask you, Dr. Kale, are you ready, sir?
Yes, please go
All
ahead.
right, because we want to learn from you. I know you have so much in you and we want to gain from you. So, we talk about census a lot in Nigeria. And for a layman, when I hear census, what comes to mind is, I'm going to be counting people one by one. You go to different jurisdictions, you go to different regions, different states, different countries, and then you count them. But is that absolutely correct? Would it be correct to say it's just counting of the people around us? And, from the prism of demography, what is population census to you? And what are the steps that is involved in carrying out an accurate population census?
Well, a population census is partly what you described. It's a process really of going across one's country and getting details of not just the number of people in the country, but their age, different information about the people in their country, their age, their gender, their occupation, different information about the demography of the country. So yes, the focus is really about going around the country and ensuring that you get as much as possible an accurate count as well as details about the people in a particular country. In terms of the steps, preparation for a census can take years. The preparation stage can take up to a year and a half, because you have to first demarcate the geographical land. You have to go and divide the country into enumeration areas. You have to do a lot of visitation. You have to ensure that you hire enough staff. You might have to purchase, if you are going electronic, a lot of equipment. You have to train your staff. You have to even decide the particular demographic characteristics that you want to collect during the census. So it's something that takes a lot of planning and preparation, and it can go on for a couple of years before you're ready to actually go to the field. The field work actually is the last stage, and some even consider that the easiest part of the entire population census process.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much, because that is not too far-fetched from what I've been thinking as a layman, right? So when you say, while census is a global practice, Nigeria has conducted just 5 census since 1960. That is quite significant. And the last one we had, 2006, I remember how those officials came into my house, and then my dad brought us out, started counting one by one, and they were noting it. But since then, I haven't seen anything like that happen in Nigeria. So, Doc, will you please run our viewers through the benefits of having an accurate population census data and the consequences of having a wrong population census data, especially when one is not ready for it?
Well, the benefits of getting an accurate population census is tied into the benefits of actually having accurate data. The objective of data is evidence-based planning. The objective of having a population census is also evidence-based planning. If you check the Nigerian Constitution, the part of the responsibility of government is the well-being of its people. And how can you cater to the well-being of your people if you don't know how many they are, you don't know how many are in a particular location, you don't know their gender, male or female, you don't know their level of education, you don't know their current status, married or single. So you need to be able to have this accurate information about your population. Otherwise, it's difficult for government to plan for that population. If I don't know that in your particular area there are 1,000 of you, how would I know how many schools are needed? How would I know how many hospitals to develop? So these are the kinds of things that make an accurate population census extremely important. It's also, and that's in terms of planning, but also population census is also used. It's what we just completed a general election recently. Population census is also used to determine. It's also used to determine the number of seats in each particular state, the number of which is also dependent on number of local government. So until you have the actual, if a state, for example, that has a larger population will have a larger number of representatives in the National Assembly. Without having an accurate census, you might give a particular state more representation than is needed, and another state less representation than is needed. It's also one of the criteria used in determining resource allocation, park allocation. So the higher your population in a particular state, the higher the distribution of national income would come to your state. So if I don't know if I get the wrong population number in your state, I might give more or less than you deserve. And at the end of the day, the distribution of income in the country will not be equitable. So it's extremely important.
Oh, interesting. Yes, interesting, because this is what we should all get ready for. It's a serious business. And apart from the budget that has been set for this, I mean, we need to take it more seriously than we have in the past. So for purpose of clarity, what would you say is the difference between the facto population census and the de jure population census? Or do you think they mean the same thing?
Oh, I think de facto is basically, I think that's the way we have did it before. De facto basically is they'll go to your house and count how many people they see living there at a particular point in time. So, but de jure is focused on the actual people that live regularly in that house. So, and that's why I think sometimes the census has not been very useful in the past, because we use de facto. Because of the resource allocation aspect of the population census, most states would encourage their citizens that live in all over the world to come back home, so they can be counted there, so that their numbers can be pushed up. It's kind of like so that your region or your state can get better federal allocation. And when you are done, you go back to where you're actually based, which is actually the wrong way to do it, because it will inflate the numbers of people living in a particular state, even though they live in another state. And at the end of the day, the state they live will be given less allocation and be less able to take care of their needs because of the money they are getting. So that's de facto. The geo basically is focused on these are the actual people that live based on residents. Let me put it that way. This is actually where you live, where you work, where you spend. This is your household. You're not just visiting or coming for a few days. So that's basically different. The jury is focused on people that actually live permanently in that location, and the factor is basically counting everybody in that location, whether they live there, whether they are visiting, whether they are temporary. So that's essentially different in the two.
Okay, interesting. So, our viewers, you have the opportunity to share your questions. We're here to take up all the questions that you have in mind. This is the man that can answer all the questions. If you put it out to me later, sorry, I can't answer those questions. So, this is the expert in the house. And Dr. Kale, I really want to emphasize on something. So, our global viewers would appreciate some level of clarification here. We talk about growth. A lot of times we say economic growth, and then we always talk about economic development. What do you think? Because for me, if you'd ask me, when you talk about growth, we always have to mention development in the same sentence. Do you think they mean the same thing, in your opinion?
Economic growth and economic development do not mean the same thing. You require economic growth for economic development. Economic growth is basically measuring the value of goods and services produced in your economy. So you are computing the various economic activities that are going on in your economy. That's what it is. You are producing goods, you are producing services. Economic development goes a bit further. Economic development has to do with your infrastructure network. It has to do with your health, your education of your people. So it's not just growth, but economic growth is needed for economic development, because when your economy grows, it means that the businesses that are producing more goods and services, which means that they are making more profit and can pay more taxes. It means that households the people are buying more of their goods, so there's a lot more money. And individuals are taxed more because they're making more. Businesses are taxed more because they are making more. And this money they are taxed is now what is used to spend on developing infrastructure, health, education, roads, and things of that nature. That's why they say economic growth is needed for economic development, because the resources that you will need for economic development is partly comes from a growing economy, but they're not the same thing. Economic development goes beyond just the production of goods and services. It includes issues like health, education, infrastructure development, security. That's what makes economic development.
Oh, great. Okay. That really puts to an end all my thoughts around economic growth and economic development. So one is about the growth of the infrastructure. And yes, I grabbed that. And I know that our viewers are enjoying this session. Please feel free to share your questions. Just put them in the box, and then we'll be very kind enough to read them out, because we all want to learn from each other. No one is an island, right? Everyone wants to learn from one another. So, Dr. Kale, I particularly have a question, right? I would like to emphasize that you know that the National Bureau of Statistics, as at 2022, the Multidimensional Poverty Index survey it says about 63%, or about 133 million people living within Nigeria were multidimensionally poor. So Nigeria is also experiencing serious infrastructural deficit and decay. How do you think we got it wrong? At what point did Nigeria get it wrong? And how can we straighten things up?
I think it will be difficult for anybody to highlight a particular time or a period where we got things wrong. I don't think even individual nations that you can. I think getting things wrong is a process. You get one thing wrong, you get the second thing wrong, and you get several things wrong before everything becomes wrong. So, and it might take a period of time. But I would say that in my opinion, the reason why we got things wrong is because we stopped adequate planning and implementation of our plans, and we just started doing things ad hoc, and that's one of the challenges that Nigeria has had. We're not planning for our future, and even if we have plans, we're not following through with the implementation of those plans, and we tend to just be and we tend to be very reactive rather than preventive. And when you plan, it means you are anticipating changes, you're anticipating challenges because in that plan. But when you are reactive, you are waiting for things to happen before you rush and do certain things. So I think it's likely a lack of planning and a lack of implementation of plans, a lack of following data. And data, the objective of data really is to inform your plan. You can even give security, for example, if you are monitoring socio-economic indicators that are worsening in a particular area, higher in poverty, higher in unemployment, higher cases of armed robbery and things, it will be clear that things are worsening in that area, and then you can take preventive action and action earlier to resolve it. But so that is basically because we have been doing things in a very ad hoc way. We stopped effective planning, we stopped implementing plans, and by the time you do that, after a while, things go out of hand. And I think I would say that's the major reason why we are having the challenges that we're facing today.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
give you an example with power. There was probably a time in Nigeria when the amount of power we generated was sufficient. But as businesses were expanding, more companies were coming in, more people were being born. We didn't think that we should actually be gradually adding to the power network. We just stuck to the same power generation that we had, despite the fact that more people were getting born, more businesses were opening, and things like that. So, example of lack of planning. You're not looking at you're not planning your economy for the next 5, 10, 20 years. You're just waiting for things to happen before you react.
Interesting. And while you were answering that question, right, I saw a comment from someone, and it says, in Nigeria, are we really engaging in census for political gains or economic prosperity? I think I may be able to answer that question because it takes us away from where we used to be to where we want to be. So, honestly, that question is interesting. In fact, I see you and I've read your question. But I would like to ask a very experienced Dr. Kale. I would say to you that can you give me an assessment of the relationship we have between Nigerians, me as a Nigerian, the government data collection agencies, and the technology that will be deployed to aid national economic planning? What do you think is the relationship between these three stakeholders or three things that I've mentioned? Because technology is not a stakeholder here.
Well, a Nigerian, the objective of the government is to improve your life, your livelihood, to improve your life in Nigeria. The objective of the data collection agency is to supply government with information about you and the challenges you have so that you can improve your life. And so it's very important that you give the government, the data collection agencies accurate information so that you can pass that accurate information to the government, and the government can design policies, programs, plans that make your life better. And part of the ways they will do that, I guess, is um, deploy one form of technology to improve your livelihood. So that's basically the relationship. Individuals like yourself have to cooperate with the data collection agencies, because if they do not, the information that they pass to government to create policies might be wrong, and if it's wrong, the policies government will create will be wrong, and those policies will not affect you. And at the end of the day, it started with you because you gave government the wrong policies. Now, if I come to your house and ask you how much you earn and you inflate your income, for example, I might tell the data collection agency will record that and pass it to the government and say, well, Fumi doesn't have a problem. She earns so much money. Meanwhile, you earn a lot less money. I'm just giving an example of challenges if you as an individual pass the wrong information to government. If I come to your house and ask you how much did you buy or did you spend on a tuber of yam, and you inflate or understate the amount, again, the data collection agency will give that to government will give it to the CBN will come up with policies trying to tackle that problem. But because the information you supplied the data collection agency was wrong, the policy that CBN will introduce will be wrong, and at the end of the day come back and harm you even more. So I think that's the relationship. Individuals, households have to be cooperate with data collection agencies so they can pass the information to the government, so the government policymakers can create the policies using different tools, which includes technology if they need to improve the lives of Nigerians.
Thank you. That was great. That was really, really great, because all of these things are intertwined and you have to make them seamless so that we can have a good result and a reliable result at that. So before I would like us to go on a break, but not now. I just want to make clarification on something and to put it out to you. You know, since the president gave approval for the budget, what are really your thoughts on the cost of this exercise? Because, you know, as accountants, cost benefit analysis is an important tool in decision making. And I know that we see that we're going to incur a huge expenditure. But what do you really do? You really think Nigeria is ready? Because we just have 2 weeks to the event. Are we truly ready for this exercise? And the fact that the government only approved the funding really of the software last month. Do you think we are ready? And do you think something great will come out from the exercise or something
Well,
accurate?
given the extremely important how important a census is, I think I'm not particularly concerned about the amount of money that is used to it. It's extremely important exercise. And census is not just in Nigeria. Nigeria, everywhere in the world are extremely expensive because it's field work. You are sending. Try and imagine how difficult it is to send individuals to every street in every local government across the 36 states of the federation.
Exactly.
It's a lot of work, and of course, it's going to take money. Some of these staff might have to sleep in some of these local governments as they're getting data of people that might be between 100 and 200 million. And they have to eat, they have to have somewhere to stay, and so it costs a lot of money. So I'm not too worried about the amount, and it's not just in Nigeria. Some other countries it even costs more than this. Um, as far as the 2 weeks is concerned, you have to remember that the National Population Commission did not just um, come up with a census in 2 weeks. They have been working on this. Like I said, it's a preparation stage. They have been working on this for about 2 years plus now. So it's not just 2 weeks. And they have gone through, I expect they have gone through all the stages that are required. And most of those stages don't require the funding you're talking about. The funding for just the software, just the software, when you get the software, you upload the software. I don't think you require more than a few days to configure the software to the database and the questions you want to collect. What is more important is to ensure that the devices are that they are good. Since they are using electronic sensor devices already purchased, and I think they already had been. Ensure that the enumerators have been selected and have been trained. That's where most of the work is. The amount that to spend buying a software is not really an issue, and I expect that. Since the training and the identification of the field workers, the demarcation of the assignment, everybody knows where they're going has already been done. I don't think a delay getting the money for the software will stop the process from going ahead. So I'm hopeful that this census this time around will be very credible, because all data, every survey in the country is dependent on the quality of the population census. If I do an unemployment survey, a poverty survey, I'm using the population census as I'm drawing from the population census to run that survey. So if the population census is wrong, any household survey that I have to do in the country might be biased and might be wrong. So it's extremely important that we get population data right.
Thank you so much. So we have a question from one of our audience, and his name is Robert Otto Obong. I want to take this before I go on a commercial break. So he says, "Good evening, Dr. Caleb. Would you say Nigerian leadership has social and economic benefits of accurate census in mind whenever census is conducted, or their interest is just for selfish political advantage? Why don't the government conduct census at meaningful intervals?"
Well, you're asking me to read the minds of human beings and see what their objectives are. And I unfortunately do not have that. So I cannot really answer what the interests of politicians and government officials are. If you ask me what my interest was in a particular thing, I probably be able to answer, but I can't really speak to why other people do certain things. All I know is that the census is very important. And it needs to be conducted regularly. And to answer your second question, um, because census are very expensive, you've seen the amount that it took to take this one. It's not something that can be done more regularly. What other countries do is recommended to be done every 10 years everywhere in the world because it's extremely expensive and takes a lot of effort and time.
Yes.
Other countries try to adopt different models to just estimate their population in between their censuses, satellite imagery, get more accurate ways of measuring birth and death rates and things like that between the 10 years. But it's extremely expensive. And certainly not a country like Nigeria with significant debt problems and our challenges with revenue. Can we afford to be doing this on a more regular basis? It's extremely expensive. And the recommendation is 10 years. And it's actually because of lack of funding that this one was actually delayed for 2 years. It should have been done 2 years ago, actually. More actually 5 years ago. Should have been
2016.
Yeah, so and it
2016.
was mostly a funding issue. So I mean, if you it's a huge amount of money to spend, and countries like us that have challenges with revenue and have huge expenditure to develop cannot actually afford to be doing this even more frequently.
Interesting. So that is just it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and it's good to know that we must do it at some point of lifetime. We must continuously engage and carry out a census activity. So thank you so much. I think we want to go on a commercial break, and when we come back, remember, it's still leveraging insight from Accurate Census for growth and development. And we have in the house our great erudite scholar, Dr. Yemi Caleb. So let's go on a commercial break, and we'll be right back. So welcome back, and we know, and I believe you're having an exciting time too, listening to erudite scholar, listening to the man that can answer all the questions. I am not here to answer the questions. I'm just here to throw the questions at him. And please feel free to send in your questions. We are here to respond to them. Friends of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, we are happy to have you here, and everyone that has joined. So thank you so much for joining. I mean, you can join from everywhere across the world. That is why we're here for you today. And remember, every Thursday, 6 p.m., ICAN On Air is here for you. Today, we are discussing leveraging insight from Accurate Census for growth and development. Dr. Kaya, are you tired of us already?
No, I'm enjoying myself.
All right, because it's your comfort zone, so I can see you so relaxed. Yeah, so I really want to ask a question, and it is about, so when I think about it, I see, looking at the population of the country vis-a-vis the growth and development, Do you think Nigeria is overpopulated? Are we having so many children? Are we saturated? Do you think we're overpopulated?
Well, that's a very difficult question for me to ask because the question I would ask you is what is our population? That's what we're trying to go and find out. So how would I
Exactly.
answer whether or not we're overpopulated without getting the population, the actual population figures, which the population census wants to help us get? So it's difficult for me to say whether we are overpopulated. However, you're only overpopulated. I'll focus on the theory. Overpopulated when your population, when your population is when your the area that the population
Nigeria.
is no longer large enough to take the population. If you have a situation where people are now fighting for resources because there's just not enough resources to go around, that's when you consider your population overpopulated. I don't think that we have situations where we're all fighting to take over resources and resources cannot go around. I believe Nigeria um, is very rich in so many things. I believe that a large part of Nigeria has not even been properly exploited. When we all traveled around the country by road, we can see huge amount of land, huge amount of space that have not been exploited yet. As opposed to other countries that when you go travel by road, you don't everything is full of buildings and infrastructure and so on. So I don't think we are overpopulated. I don't think been able to we have exhausted the resources available to us. I think we are not the resources are not fully available to the population, but not because we are overpopulated, but because we are not adequately exploiting the resources that we have. We're not doing a good job ensuring that we fully and efficiently exploit the resources that exist. Instead, we are not touching the resources, and we are trying to fight for the limited resources that we are willing for now to make available. But no, I don't think that Nigeria is the population is more than the available resources that exist in the country.
Interesting. So you advise everyone to go ahead and procreate, right? You
No,
said
that's
we
not
are
what I
not.
said. That's not what I said.
Okay.
Procreation is based on your ability to take care of the children that you want to produce. If you want to produce 100 children, I believe you can go ahead and take care of them. I think that's what matters at this point. Ability to take care of the children that you want to produce. And there are in this country people that can take care of 100 children, and there are in this country people that can take care of one. So I think it depends. But overall, I don't think the country is so overburdened by the number of people in Nigeria that we can't move around without bumping each other. We have to fight for every single land to farm
Yeah.
or I don't think we're gotten there yet. If resources are lacking, it's not because they don't exist, it's because, like I said,
Yeah.
we're not exploiting them properly.
Interesting. Thank you so much, sir, for that. So that question will lead me to this next one. Nigeria actually has the highest GDP in Africa. But outside the top 10 in terms of the GDP per capita, how can the insight from census data, how can we actually use this insight, not just in increasing our aggregate GDP, but also to improve the GDP per capita and reduce the gap between the rich and the poor?
Well, that's exactly what data is for. When you get your population census, you can do more accurate surveys on employment, on poverty, on health, education, and things like that.
Exactly.
And when you get that information, you can now, you know exactly, you have situations where people will go and make, in Nigeria, people would build roads from point A to B where very few people live. And in other areas where a lot more people live, they don't build as many roads. And that's what I'm talking about, inadequate planning. So when you know what the population is, or you build, there are some places where they have six hospitals for very few people, and in other places they have the same six for a population so that is 10 times as much. So when you get we are talking of improving GDP per capita, improving living standards of people, you have to know how many people are in each particular state, what their status is. If I want to know the number of schools or hospitals I should create, I have to know the number of children in the area where I want to create those schools. Otherwise, in that particular area, there will not be enough schools for that for those children. But in another area, they will have way too many schools for the number of children that are uneducated in their place. So if you want to improve the livelihood of your population and thereby improve their income so that the GDP per capita improves, you have to know exactly total number of people and the demography of the different the demographics of your country. It is extremely important. Otherwise, you cannot plan for them.
Interesting. Thank you for that. In fact, that's really important for us to know that the GDP, Nigeria, I mean, there's a gap, right? But we can manage it. If we compare ourselves with other developed countries, we'll see that Nigeria is not doing bad at all. We have this question. I think this is the second time
If
Fagbola is going.
I jump in there just before you continue? The reason why Nigeria can have the biggest GDP and not be doing as well with GDP per capita, yes, what it has to do firstly with the size of the population, but secondly, it has to do with the fact that that big GDP, the distribution of income, we have a very unequal distribution of income. So very few people are benefiting from the huge size of the GDP. So you have a situation where you have a big GDP and then people are not, the income distribution is very poor. And because of that, a few people are benefiting mostly from that huge GDP, while majority of the population are not. And that's part of the reason why, one of the reasons why you can have a high GDP, a large GDP, but it seems as if you have a very high poverty rate at the same time.
Interesting. Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree with you. That's insightful. So, a question from Fagbola Temitokwe Adeni. It says, good evening, Dr. Kale. Is it because of longer gestation period between one census to another that makes us use estimation more than the actual head count? How can we address this abnormality?
Yes, that's obviously because you are doing your census once every 10
Yes.
years. Between those 10 years, you have to find ways to, because you speak, government still has to plan with figures. So you have to find ways to estimate your population in between those two census periods. And the best way you usually do that is to monitor the birth and death rate, because your your population will grow depending on the interrelationship between the birth and death rate. If your population at last count was 10 and 5 people have been born, making 15, but 4 people have died, you subtract 4, so you have a rough idea what your population is. So better tracking of birth and death rates in Nigeria will give us a roughly better estimate of our population in between the two population periods.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I hope Fagbola is happy about the response because I am. So I would want to say, Nigeria is about to have a new set of leaders in the political and in the governance structure. Assuming some of them are watching us right now, because we as accountants, we are supposed to be accountable for a lot of things and also put things right where they are wrong. So what would be your advice or your suggestion to the leaders, the upcoming leaders, on the good policies, accurate data gathering, on planning for Nigeria's growth and development? What would you tell them even before they assume that seat?
Well, I would emphasize that whatever policies they want to introduce, they should make sure it's based on facts, and that means based on data. I would advise that they ensure that they fund the data collection agencies, because the data is the one that tells them what the problems are. The data is the one going to tell them whether their policies are working as they are doing it. So I would advise that they should ensure that whatever policies or programs or plans they choose to introduce, they should first ensure that it's informed with data. And it's data that will help them to plan accurately. And I think if you plan without data, you'll get it wrong. But if you plan with data, you have a better opportunity to understand the problem. And when you understand that problem through data, you can now come up with recommendations to fix it. And that's what I'm going to say. If they plan with data, their policies will be more targeted and more effective.
Interesting. So, for you as an economist, I know you're one of the top economists globally. So, for you in particular, and I know you are you're an astute researcher. So, can you give us an insight to what the outcome of this 2023 census exercise will be from the perspective of the past trend or even from our current realities? And what do we expect for the future?
Well, I can't really give you predict how well the census would be um, the outcome of the census will be. I have to, and I'm not in charge of the population commission, so I'm not fully versed in their the level of their preparations and what they're going to do. But I think they have been running this population census for decades. I assume that they they fully understand how it should go. I think there might be some challenges, no matter how much they practice and train, because it's a new approach. They're trying to use technology this time, and every time you try and introduce technology, you usually assume there's going to be a new approach. There's usually going to be some challenges, but I'm hopeful that this time around we'll be able to do a better job in counting ourselves, and more importantly, in the distribution of our population across the states and regions. So all I will say is I'm optimistic and hopeful that, especially since they say technology has been adopted this time, that they
Yeah.
might get it better. The result might be much better than previous ones.
Very nice to know. I'm happy to know that, and I know that you are very vast in the worldwide, or should I say, the global thought on sensors and the reason for statistics. So, for the benefit of our global audience, I would really want you to be frank about this response. And as Nigerians' former number one statistician, I want you to give us an unbiased assessment here. Is Nigeria economy growing? Is it static or is it declining? And what are the reasons?
Nigeria's economy is growing, it is static, and it is declining. And I think that depends on
Three,
which
one.
depends
Interesting.
depends on which period you're looking at. It depends on which sectors you're looking at. There are some sectors that are growing, there are some sectors that are contracting, and there are some sectors that are static. But overall, I think I would say that in the last 5 years, anyway, since COVID, I would say that Nigeria's economy is stagnant because we have only grown by about 1% in the last 5 years. Growing, yes, but more or less stagnant. I would consider a 1% average growth rate as stagnant over the last 5 years.
Oh, great. So I know you were neither here nor there, but I know that was a smart one. So, viewers, thank you so much for watching. We haven't come to the end of the program yet. You can feel free to send in your questions. We're here to respond. And Dr. Kale is here. You may not find him easily like this, he is very busy. I really didn't want to read all of his resume to you today. You know how busy he is, and we are quite delighted to have you here. I mean, this is knowledge in front of me. I can just see bookworm everywhere around me. So I have another question from Fagwala. Fagwala, you have your day today. It says, okay, I think I've read this question already about the abnormality of Nigeria. So the question is from Shoaib Badmos. It says, how can private organizations use sensors for their strategic planning?
Okay,
Let's bring it home.
I'll answer that question with an illustration. Now, assuming that you, to me, want to start a business, maybe I don't know, a laundry service. The location you are going to place your business depends on the amount of people that can patronize your business. Now, if you go and open your laundromat in an area where everybody has their own washing machine, your business will probably collapse because nobody in that area needs your service. If you go and
Yes.
put your laundromat in a place, or maybe an internet cafe, you go and put it in a place where everybody in the area have their own laptops and their own Wi-Fi. Again, nobody's going to come to your internet cafe to use your internet because they don't need it. So knowing the population, when you have knowing the breakdown of the population across the country would help you to know, as a private organization, where to situate your business. Otherwise you just be doing trial and error, and it might backfire. So this is an example of a way that census data can be used. If you know that, for example, you are selling a more predominantly female product, and you know that in this particular area, the people that live in this area are dominated by men, then your product might not sell as well, unless of course the men are buying the products for women in a different area. So that's how you use data to determine where to put your business. That's where you use data to, as a private individual, to know exactly where and how, and where and how the best location to your business will be.
Okay, interesting answer. I know you have just been touching the points that we really want on this program, and I'm delighted to have you here, Dr. Caleb. So another viewer has a question, Oma NS Chuku Naru, and it says, how can the data from National Identity Management Council, BVN from banks, INEC, and the different agency that collect our biometrics, how can they synergize to foster a new accurate census in Nigeria? Do you have answers to that question?
Well, I'm not sure if it can be used for a census. By definition, a census is a head count. I think it can be used to get better idea of population and population numbers. But the first stage is to harmonize the work of all these agencies collecting identity data. The problem is that they are collecting it for different reasons. So their formats are different. The information that the banks want to collect is different from what NIMSI wants to collect. Is different from the objective of the BVN and so on. So you just have to harmonize your template. They have different templates. And once you harmonize the template and ensure that all the agencies' needs are being captured, then you have one identity document that any of them can collect. And if all of them has access to the information they require, they have a shared database where all of them can tap into. Because all the information, I need 3 things, you need 4 things, making 7, and the third person needs to making 10. You create a form that has 10 things and make sure that all those 10 things are collected anytime any of those agencies are trying to collect their own identity data. So everybody is happy. And then you ensure that there's access, there's a central system where all of these agencies can access that information anytime they need it. I think it's not, I don't think it's very that difficult. I think it's more unwillingness of the agencies to cooperate with one another. I think that's where the challenges are. Not that there's anything very challenging in doing this. I think it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you so much for that wonderful one. I have a question from 2 audience, and one says, the citizenry vibes, the vibes as to upcoming census is not encouraging. What can government do to address this? And it further said, I foresee census apathy if not urgently addressed. Do you think so? Is that your own notion too?
I understand that some Nigerians might be reluctant to go through this process for 3 reasons. One, they might believe that, well, nothing good is going to come out of it, even though the objectives of the census is to gather the demographic data that can be used to plan for the economy and improve the lives of Nigerians. Many people might believe, well, then nothing's going to happen, and they're basing it on their perception of past events. So I understand that. Also, we just completed a very tense election, so some people might also be feeling drained and disappointed, and that again might just give them I just don't want to cooperate with anything. I'm fed up, I'm tired, I'm not happy with things. So there is a chance that is going to happen. I don't think the atmosphere, I don't think it's actually against the census per se. I just think there's a general atmosphere of despair and disappointment and fatigue with government agencies and with government right now. That might be a challenge that, but I think this challenge can be overcome if the enumerators are well trained. I think if enumerators go to households, depending on how courteous and understanding they are, they can win over the people they are meant to enumerate and make them feel happy and comfortable. I think it depends on the approach of the enumerators that matters. But yes, I think there's an atmosphere of general people are not generally happy. They're feeling frustrated and exhausted. And yes, that atmosphere might make them unwilling to cooperate with the enumerators, even though it's a law, they're just tired. And like I said, hopefully the enumerators will be able to rise up to that challenge and win over those they are trying to enumerate.
Thank you. So I have two questions because I know time is not on our side again. I would like to say there's a question from our audience. It says, my question is, how can accuracy, this is from Omolaja Olowo Jeje. My question is, accuracy be achieved in the census when there are no proper orientation from the government agencies or civil society organization as we have been divided along ethnic? Is that true?
Well, I don't know if we have been divided among ethnic. I can't speak to that. I have friends in every ethnic group, so I'm certainly not divided. I don't know if other people are. Um, but yes, I don't think, although government has tried a few times to educate the public about the census, I believe that a lot more could have been done. Um, Again, I think I'm just going to, and again, this might be a weakness that might make the process more challenging. But I think there's still a few weeks, if any member of the government agencies, the orientation agency, and the population commission are listening. I think they still have 2 weeks to go on an aggressive. There's still time to go on an aggressive sensitization process. It's a bit late,
I
but
think so
better
too.
if they went on the aggressive sanitization, they can solve that problem because we still have a bit more
Yeah,
time. And
I
like I
think.
said, a lot will also depend on the patients and how courteous the enumerators are, because they might have to, because no matter how much the sensitization program, how much sensitization is done, not everybody's going to have heard about it no matter what. And you're going to get some people that
Honestly,
understand what you're. So
honestly.
at the end of the day, it's the enumerators at that point that have to be very patient with the respondents, take them through everything, explain, maybe even receive some insult and abuse in the process, but they have to remain cool and calm and courteous and try and win them over. I think that's but between now and then, the agencies can do a lot of sensitization and remind the enumerators that they have to be very courteous and understanding and not get worked up or angry by the responses that they might get here and there.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, because I have just 1 minute left on the show, and this is just going to be a question that, I mean, just your advice. ICANN is always open to ideas that will positively advance the growth of our members. And, please, what is your advice or suggestion to ICANN on filling knowledge gaps in data gathering, in technology deployment, or even in the economic growth and development, especially in Nigeria?
Well, I would expect that even though ICANN is an association of accountants, that they will have a few experts in data gathering and analysis in their system. And I think if they don't, I think it might, because it's not just, it might be important for them to hire a few um, experts in data collection analysis. I'm happy to send my CV as well if they would hire me. But I think in addition to that, I think since ICANN is not having a few in-house statisticians, I think in addition to that, they should do a lot more partnering with data
Okay,
collection agencies, both
okay.
public and private sector, since they don't want to go into the headache of having to understand the intricacies of data collection. They should also partner with the official statistics offices, the state statistics offices, and there are many other private organizations who are very experienced in gathering data. They should do that, and I think so they don't have to worry about trying to build
Yeah.
capacity statistics themselves.
Thank you so much. I mean, I had a feel on the program. Thank you so much, Dr. Kale. We really, truly enjoyed your session. Dr. Yevi Kale, thank you for coming on ICANN on Air. Everyone that watched today, thank you. And also refer your friends of Chartered Accountants, to watch the next episode on Thursday next week. And we'll be here to educate, to inform, and to let you know what is going on around our society. So until we meet again, my name is Fumi Olani. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening.